Let's just start. Let me introduce myself briefly. My name is Sanidhya Meena, and I have secured all India rank 480 this year in UPSC Civil Services Examination 2025. Let me just talk about my educational background. So, I'm a civil engineering graduate from IIT Delhi in the year of 2024, and this was my second attempt. I gave the first attempt with the college itself, that was in 2024, and this was my second attempt, and in which I cleared with the rank AIR 480. So let's just keep this session quite concise and to the point so that maximum things can be retained. So हम सबसे पहले prelims से चालू करते हैं. सो आई होप आप लोगों को बेसिक रिसोर्सेज पता होंगे कि लाइक मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री के लिए स्पेक्ट्रम, लक्ष्मीकांत फॉर पॉलिटी, जी सी लियोंग सम सेलेक्टेड चैप्टर्स फॉर जोग्राफी एंड एज वेल एज एन सी आर टीज एंड सो ऑन, मतलब लाइक जो बाकी टॉपर्स बताते हैं. बट मैं प्रीलिम्स को एक जो मेन पॉइंटर्स हैं उनके थ्रू बात करता हूँ रादर देन जस्ट बीइंग क्या रिसोर्सेज फॉलो करनी चाहिए. आई वुड लाइक टू मोर फोकस अपॉन दी स्ट्रैटेजी इटसेल्फ. सो first, minimum book and maximum revision strategy. I think what happens in this UPSC journey is there is a lot of content. If you go to any other shop in ORN or elsewhere in online medium also, आपको बहुत सारे रिसोर्सेज मिलेंगे. तो हमें ये कोशिश करनी है कि हम एक क्वालिटी रिसोर्स सेलेक्ट करें एंड उसका मैक्सिमम रिवीजन करें. बिकॉज व्हाट हैपेंस इज कि जब हम मैक्सिमम रिवीजन करेंगे तो हमारे लिए कंसोलिडेशन बेटर होगा एंड दैट विल रिफ्लेक्ट इन द एग्जामिनेशन. हमें चीज़ें ज़्यादा याद आएंगी एंड विल बेटर परफॉर्म इन द एग्जामिनेशन इटसेल्फ. So the first point for the prelims is that minimum books, maximum revision. That should be the strategy. Second should be the PYQs. Actually, PYQs should be your absolute compass, because what happens is in the UPSC CSE exam, we are just given the syllabus and the PYQs. Nothing else is given by the UPSC officially. Based upon it, the syllabus of the prelims is not too exhaustive like it is in the mains. We just only have the PYQs, and based upon the PYQ analysis only हमें पता लगाना है कि हमें किस टाइप की स्ट्रैटेजी फॉलो करनी है, कौन से कंटेंट पे ज़्यादा फोकस करना है. लाइक मोस्ट ऑफ यू who are in the CSE journey might be aware of the art and culture में we have Buddhism, Jainism as a theme. Many questions like in past 14 years after 2013 when the pattern has changed, like each and everywhere there is a one question that is from Buddhism and Jainism. So it makes sense if we study that part in more rigorous, or I would say in more depth manner. So that should be our strategy. Apart from it, PYQs tell us that where we should put the boundary upon. Like you cannot score, in my personal opinion, you cannot score 180, 185 kind of score in the UPSC CSE prelims, because there will be some questions like at most what toppers usually suggest from my time also, man, like I have been listening to this also, that at most we'll know 30 to 40 questions only, and beyond that it's our just aptitude to solve MCQs. Like there are tips and tricks that are there in the market. We follow these tips and tricks along with our wisdom, and actually we try to solve or attempt the questions in the lines of 80s and 90s, and that usually ends up getting the marks somewhere around 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, and really 140. I haven't seen a score of 150 plus in GS1 in the UPSC CSE prelims. So that should be our focus, that PYQ analysis is quite must. We should have PYQ analysis with our hand. Third is rigorous mock test practice and analysis. So if you have done the basic static resources and you have consolidated by revising it many times, along with it you have done PYQ analysis. The third part is we should have MCQ solving aptitude, and you'll get only with by solving many MCQs, as many as possible. So my personal strategy was I used to solve MCQs on an alternate days basis in the last 1 and 1.5 month, so that I have that aptitude with me in the on the final day of the examination itself. So I have solved somewhere around 45 to 50 mock tests in this year of CSPT 2025. So rigorous mock test analysis is also important, not just giving the test. अगर आपने सिर्फ टेस्ट दिया है and you haven't analyzed it, so believe me, अगर आपने उसके अच्छे से थोड़े बहुत जो भी important pointers हैं वो आपने नहीं लिखे हैं, तो most of them will be like evaporated from your memory, and आपको बहुत ज़्यादा कुछ याद नहीं आएगा. But if you have done the exercise of rigorous analysis, like making a Word document or short notes out of it, then revising it a week before or 2 week before will fetch you more important marks than just wandering here and there just for the content. In the prelims, what my personal strategy was, I used to focus more upon the static part. Because in my first prelims, I have scored somewhere around 42.5 marks. And in this prelims, I have cleared the forest cutoff. As of now, the forest marks are not out, so I'm not sure what is the exact mark that I have got. So, but the major change that I did was in the first attempt, although it was with my college, but the static part was not too clear for me, to be honest. Like I was not clear with the polity part itself. Like in 2024, the questions were too factual, and many factual questions were not known to me, which were quite in static knowledge. So that is the part where I lacked, that I felt after the post analysis. And apart from it, I think the current was not an issue in the first part itself because I haven't studied in depth, so I cannot say much about the current part for the first attempt. But in the second attempt, I had studied the PT 365, and believe me, if you have covered one source holistically for the prelims for the current, it is quite more than enough. Like if there is a question that is based upon a very macro theme, then it will be covered in these monthly magazines that are there of various coaching institute. But if you are covering like 3 4 monthly magazines or some annual magazines like PT 365, then it doesn't make much sense in the prelims. Because what happens is, if we are focusing more on current, then we'll be compromising the static, and we should not compromise static at the cost of current. That should be our strategy. So this was my part for the current. Regarding the CSET, if you are new to the CSPT journey, then please try to attempt the 2023 paper of the CSAT. You'll get hold of what kind of level the CS UPSC has increased for the CSET part. If you are scoring well beyond 100 marks in the CS 20 CSET 2023, then it should not be much problem for you. But if you are scoring somewhere here and there about the cutoff, then you should also prepare for the CSET. I would say much more than the individual who is scoring 100 marks plus in the CSET of 2023. But if you are scoring well beyond 100 also, I'll suggest just try to practice as much as in the last month for the CSAT also, that it will not shock you in the further attempts like in 26, 27, or whatever which attempt you are giving. And so I have talked about the minimum resource maximum revision. Second is the PYQs. Third is the rigorous mock test analysis. Fourth is the CSET part. Fifth, we have talked about the current affairs. And sixth, adapting to the new patterns. Like after 2023 and in 2022, there were many questions of only one correct, only two correct. So each and every year there is some other pattern that UPSC trying to inculcate in these years. Like in 2024, there were 2 3 questions of the match the column of 3 by 3 matrix, but in 2025 there were many questions. There are many questions in 2024 2025 based upon the 3 statement analysis, like statement 1, statement 2, statement 3, and the assertion reason kind of thing. So UPSC is trying to evolve, so we should also try to evolve with the evolving pattern. So that should be our approach. And for the kind of attempt what we should make in the prelims, personally there is a sweet spot for each and every candidate that he or she gets after attempting a certain amount of mock tests, certain number of mock tests. So we should first try to get a sweet spot in the range of 80s or 90s. That was my personal recommendation, because what happens is, if we see it statistically, then if we are trying to attempt 40 45 questions based upon these tips and tricks that are there in the market, then if 40 50% is correct, then we'll fetch good amount of marks. So that should be our strategy. Like if we are attempting 50 questions based upon tips and tricks, and if 25 are wrong, 25 are correct, then we'll get a net positive mark. And each and every mark in prelims is quite important, believe me. So that is my strategy for the prelims. Let's move on to the second part. That is the mains part. After clearing prelims, we have covered a basic amount of knowledge, basic amount of content for the static subject of history, geography, polity, economy, and so on. But there are many subjects which are not asked in the prelims, and you might be aware of if you are preparing. And for the new aspirants, I would like to highlight the new subjects. Like in GS1, there is society part, the post independence part, the world history part that is not majorly covered in the prelims. Second, for the GS2 part, although international relations is covered, but it not a that depth that is being covered in the mains part. Like 50 marks are allotted to the international relations, social justice part, governance parts is not covered in the mains, in the prelims. For GS3, internal security, disaster management, up to a certain extent, agriculture, and I might, these are the major things that are not covered in the prelims. And GS4 ethics, that is quite scoring as well as very important paper for the mains, that is also not covered in the prelims. So we have a sufficient amount of syllabus that is for the mains, that is not covered in the prelims. So we should strategically plan for its preparing if we are giving it for the first time between the prelims and mains. And if you have sufficient amount of time, then my advice would be to prepare these subjects quite thoroughly before the prelims, if that is possible. And if it is your first prelim or some first mains, then you have to inculcate these subject in the preparation in the break of some 85 to 90 days that is there between the prelims and mains. So let me first tell my marks of the mains, and accordingly I'll share my strategy. So this year I have scored in essay. My marks were 91, that are quite suboptimal. GS1 my score was 99. In GS2 my score was 121. In GS3 again my score was 71, and GS4 it was 110. In optional I have scored 300 marks. So my this makes my written total 792. So I think I should share my strategy for the somewhat for the GS1, GS2, and GS4 somewhat, and then optional, because in other subject my marks are not up to the great marks, and you can look upon to those toppers who have scored much more in these subjects. So, first, let's start with the trinity of means. So, actually, your strategy for means should be that you have thoroughly prepared for this trinity of means that is very famous in the UPSC CSE means. That is essay, ethics, and optional. Believe me, these three subjects are very important for your CSE means, because it is these subjects that have a very, I would say, capability to vary marks. Like you'll see people with scoring 140 marks in ethics, and also people scoring 90, 85 marks or 80 marks in ethics. So there is a huge variation. For optional also, there are people scoring 180, 190 and below also it, and people scoring 350 marks. So you can see what kind of variation is there in the essay, ethics, and optional. So these three are, like, it is common saying that these three decide the your cutoff for the interview. Like if you have cleared these three subjects with a good amount of marks, then you'll probably be getting an interview call. So what should be the strategy for mains should be that we should make our notes upon the keyword based note making. हमें क्या होता है कि कीवर्ड बेस्ड नोट मेकिंग में हमें ये फायदा मिलता है कि हम बहुत सारे कंटेंट को एक कीवर्ड से समझा सकते हैं. सो दैट इज रियली हेल्पफुल फॉर अस इन द मेंस, बिकॉज मेंस में हमें देखो 10 मिनट्स के 7 मार्क्स के क्वेश्चन, 10 मार्क्स के क्वेश्चन के लिए 7 मिनट्स मिलते हैं. तो उसमें हमें पूरा स्ट्रक्चर भी करना है, हमें लिखना भी है, हमें सारे पॉइंट्स भी लिखना है. सो व्हाट वी कैन डू इज़ कि हमारा अगर कोई कंटेंट को हम कंसाइजनेस में अगर हम बता सकते हैं कि क्या है, मतलब पूरा कंटेंट का छोटे सेंटेंसेस में हम लिख सकते हैं, बहुत ज़्यादा नंबर ऑफ पॉइंट्स लिख सकते हैं. लाइक कि हम अगर 10 मार्क्स में 10-15 पॉइंट्स लिख देते हैं और उसमें सबको कंसाइज कंसाइज लिख रखा है कि और क्वालिटी पॉइंट्स हैं, तो एनी वे यू विल फेच मार्क्स, बिकॉज एग्जामिनर एट द एंड ऑफ द डे अगर आपने अच्छा कंटेंट लिखा है तो ही और शी विल बी फोर्स टू गिव यू मार्क्स, बिकॉज वो भी हमसे कोई ऐसा, मतलब उनको भी कोई मेडल नहीं मिल रहा है थिंक कि कम नंबर देके. इफ यू आर राइटिंग गुड अमाउंट ऑफ कीवर्ड्स एंड गुड अमाउंट ऑफ पॉइंट्स, देन you'll be definitely getting good amount of marks. That we can hope only. And the art of answer writing, like in the mains we usually write in introduction, body, and conclusion format. And personally what I used to do was I used to write the body in the point format itself. Like there is a famous strategy by Ayan Jensen, AIR 16 to CSE 2023. You can refer to his video and his strategy for the mains. He has explained beautifully how to write answers in the mains, and he has scored well beyond 450 plus marks in the GS. So his strategy worked for him. So the art of answer writing is that you should write the answer in introduction, body, and conclusion format. And in the body, you can write the points that work for most of the candidates. So that should be the strategy. Mastering the high yielding paper, as I have talked about the trinity of essay, ethics, and optional, we should focus upon these subject like quite literally, because they fetch you marks if you have put in the efforts. Although there is some subjectivity here and there, but at the end of the day, you'll be rewarded for your effort. That is that we can hope for. Like fourth, for the optional subject, I have scored a decent marks in the optional, so I would like to say that please deep dive in your optional, but put a boundary. Like for my optional was anthropology, so what I can say is please study anthropology quite rigorously, but don't become an anthropologist. There should be a limit to it. Like we are studying that amount of content that we can reproduce upon the paper if the question is asked. There is no need or like no sense to read the 2 3 books for a single topic or single chapter, because if you the ROI after a certain point of time or certain point of content, it decreases drastically. So we should limit our content up to a certain extent that we can reproduce it, we can answer most of the PYQs based upon it. So that should be our strategy. Let me share the optional strategy for you. What I did was, after not clearing the CSE 24 prelims, I sorted the syllabus of the anthropology, the PYQs of the anthropology, and prepared my own notes from the let me mention that I have done the foundation from the Karandeep sir's Level Up IS, and he's absolutely best in the market. What I felt was, although uh, I haven't learned or I haven't read the content of others, but Karandeep sir was absolutely fantastic in explaining the content in quite crisp or conceptual or manner. So he was like, after studying his notes, I have consolidated my own notes based upon the syllabus as well as the PYQs. What you can do is that, like there is a unit one in the anthropology or maybe your optional subject. First look at the syllabus, then look at the PYQs. What kind of PYQs have been asked uh, in the past 10 15 years, and based upon that you'll realize that often in the optional subject, especially for the humanities, and I think for the other subjects also, many questions get repeated. If not questions exactly, the themes do get repeated. And that is the case for the prelims also. Like in prelims also, we had the question of Arghat way back in 2010s, and we got the same question, exact same question in the 2025. So you can think like themes will be repeated quite often. So PYQ analysis is must, not only for GS but also for the optional, because there is a saying that almost 50% of the optional paper is being repeated from the past 10 to 15 years of the paper. So PYQs like solves our 50% of the problem, and we have to just solve our own 50% of the problem, and we'll be well beyond of like better off of the our situation. So that should be our strategy. The rule of completion in the means, yeah, that is quite important. Like let's say if you have 15 minutes, or then if you are writing just only a 10 marker or 15 marker question, believe me, if you are writing 2 10 marker question in that time, it will fetch you more marks. Because what happens is, if we are writing a single answer in a much longer time, we'll just gain marginally 1 or 2 marks additionally. But if we are writing two questions separately in that marks, then we'll get somewhere around 3 4 marks if it are if these are 10 marker question. So we'll score somewhere around like 8 marks. But if we are just attempting a 10 marker question itself only in these 10 minutes or whatever the time you have, then we'll be getting just I think 5 or 6 marks, and each and every marks decide your rank in the final list. You can like you can see any list of the 2025 2024 23 22, you'll see many candidates on the same marks itself, and just changing their rank on the 1 mark itself. Like each mark changes the rank, each mark changes the service. So each mark is quite important. I'm trying to say that. So this was the strategy for the means. Like let me first revise or like concise it. The keyword based note making for the, especially for the GS means subject. Like what happens is the syllabus for the GS means part in the GS mains part is quite exhaustive. So we can make notes based upon the topic that is mentioned in the syllabus, and based upon that we can like make our notes as well as solve the PYQs. If we have solved the 10 to 15 years of PYQs and we had keyword based notes, then we have prepared sufficiently for the mains. Like although there is nothing sufficient, but a good amount of, or a good level of the preparation has been done. If you have covered the 10 to 15 years of PYQs for the mains, if you have your single pager, 1 pager or 2 pager notes for the means, then you have sufficiently, or I would say up to a great extent, you have prepared a good for the means. After this, then you will be applying these keywords and your notes, as well as your PYQ based knowledge in the mock test, and based upon that the feedback. Although please try to use your wisdom also while getting the feedback, like which kind of feedback are just for the sake of giving you feedback, and what are the true feedbacks that you can incorporate. So that should be our strategy. I would like to also mention that there is a institute, Think QIS, by Paras Chitkara sir. He has sorted this main syllabus part and the PYQs part. He had made the short notes based upon the themes that are recurring in the mains and based upon the PYQs. So he has quite exhaustively prepared notes, and I have used his notes for the GS2 parts, like of the social just for the governance, for the international relation, and I have scored 121 marks. So I think that really helped for me. So I would like to mention the Parashitkara sir here also. We have talked about the art of answer writing. Third, the high yield paper of the GS 4 essay and essay, ethics and optional. Yes, we have covered it. And deep diving in the optional subject, as I have mentioned, like in the optional subject, UPSC is quite exhaustively demanding us to prepare on a postgraduate level. So if you are preparing any of the optional, please try to be more in more like have more content over it, just beyond your GS content, so that you can fetch more answers, more marks based upon your more academic answer. So what you should do is you should have an academic tone in your answer, but you should not become quite academic while preparing. Like you should have a sufficient amount of knowledge for the anthropology, if it is for philosophy or PSI or what is there. But you should not become just a social scientist in the sake of just preparing for the optional subject. Because at the end of the day, we have to realize that we are preparing for an exam and it is just another optional subject. And if we have diligently prepared the syllabus, the 10-year, 15-year PYQs, and also we have given these certain mock tests, then we are on a good amount of level that we can attempt a certain paper of the GS means or the optional means. So let's just sum up the common do's and don'ts for the UPSC CSE preparation based upon the strategy that I have mentioned till now. Like first, limit resources and maximize the revision. Second, PYQs analysis that I have been focusing from the starting, that PYQs analysis is quite must. Third, try to integrate prelims and mains preparation if it is your first attempt. Like, do not just leave the main subject for the 85 to 90 days, because what happens is you can cover these subject up to a certain level in the gap, but that gap has been reduced from 4 months to 3 months as of the 2025 attempt. So you'll be not getting much amount of time to prepare. Start from the fresh these each subject up to a great level. Like you'll be prepared with these subject if you put good amount of efforts. But for preparing it holistically, you should integrate these subjects starting from the starting itself. uh, फोर्थ, प्रायोरिटाइज कंटेंट कंसिस्टेंट आंसर राइटिंग. लाइक मैंने क्या किया था एंथ्रोपोलॉजी के लिए, मैंने रोज बिटवीन प्रीलिम्स एंड मेंस आई यूज्ड टू राइट 50 मार्क्स ऑफ क्वेश्चंस डेली. That was my aim, and I used to I have like completed the same more than 90% of the days which I have planned it. So मैं रोज 50 नंबर के क्वेश्चंस लिख रहा था, तो मेरे अंदर एक सबकॉन्शियस माइंड में मेरे वो कंटेंट ऑलरेडी थोड़ा सिंक इन हो रहा था जो भी मैं क्वेश्चंस लिख रहा था. एंड आई always used to write the PYQs only, nothing else. Although I have joined the test series of Karandeep sir at Level Up IAS, and his test series was also based upon the PYQs also and his content. But मैंने maximum उनके टेस्ट एज वेल एज PYQs लिखे. टेस्ट मैंने इसलिए लिखे कि बिकॉज ऑफ मैं रोज आंसर लिख रहा था, तो मुझे थोड़ा इवेल्युएशन भी चाहिए था कि मैं कैसे आंसर्स लिख रहा हूँ. सो व्हाट आई यूज्ड टू डू वाज कि मैं वीकली और बाई वीकली बेसिस पे मैं टेस्ट दे देता था, जिससे कि मुझे कुछ फीडबैक मिलता था. एंड फिर उससे मुझे पता चलता था कि व्हाट आई एम डूइंग रॉन्ग, व्हाट आई एम डूइंग राइट, एंड बेस्ड अपॉन दैट मैं मेरी स्ट्रैटेजी को थोड़ा इधर उधर टिल्ट मोल्ड कर देता था. सो आंसर राइटिंग डेली करिए, टेस्ट कुछ फ्रीक्वेंसी पे दे लीजिए, जिससे हमें पता चल जाए कि मेजर हम कोई ऐसा मिस्टेक तो नहीं कर रहे हैं, कुछ ब्लंडर तो नहीं कर रहे हैं, दैट वी आर नॉट रियलाइजिंग. बिकॉज हम अकेले अगर हम लिख रहे हैं तो हमें होता है कभी कभार नहीं रियलाइज हो पाता है. एंड फिफ्थ, टेक मॉक टेस्ट एंड एनालाइज देम. अगर आप सिर्फ मॉक टेस्ट दे रहे हैं, उनको एनालाइज नहीं कर रहे हैं, तो उसका ज़्यादा मतलब है नहीं. एंड सेम फॉर दी PYQs. अगर आपने सोचा है कि आपने 10-15 ईयर्स के PYQs दे लिए हैं, तो दैट विल नॉट डू मच. आपको उनको एनालाइज भी करना है। एट द एंड ऑफ द डे हमें ये एनालाइज करना है कि कौन सी रिकरिंग थीम्स हैं, कैसे टाइप के क्वेश्चन बाउंसर्स होते हैं कि जो किसी को भी नहीं आ रहे हैं एग्जाम हॉल में और उन्हें वो लिखने हैं। हमें किस टाइप के टिप्स एंड ट्रिक्स जो यूपीएससी दे रहा है कि सॉफ्ट स्टेटमेंट्स हैं, बिल्कुल एब्सोल्यूट स्टेटमेंट्स हैं, सम ऑफ द क्वेश्चन, सम ऑफ दीज, नन ऑफ दीज, ऐसे टाइप के जो भी टिप्स एंड ट्रिक्स हैं जो जिससे आप थोड़े एक्वेंटेड हो जाओ, आप थोड़े फेमिलियर हो जाओ, जिससे कि आपको जब एग्जाम में जाओ तो आपको रहे कि हाँ, I have sufficiently solved the PYQs. I have covered the static, and beyond that, most of the people are not covering much. To be honest, अगर आपने स्टैटिक कर लिया है, आपने करंट अफेयर्स नहीं से कर लिया और आपने पीवाईक्यूज दे लिए तो यू आर ऑन गुड लेवल टू क्लियर द सीएससी एग्जाम। बस आपको एक एमसीक्यू सॉल्विंग एप्टीट्यूड भी डेवलप करना है। कॉमन डोंट्स, लेट्स जस्ट focus upon these. Do not ignore the CSAT. मतलब you have been hearing this from the many toppers who have like scored beyond less than the cut off. So उनको बात मानिए, मतलब कि अगर आप उनसे सीसेट को कॉम्प्रोमाइज कर रहे हैं तो एट द एंड ऑफ द डे आप आपके जीएस की प्रिपरेशन को कॉम्प्रोमाइज कर रहे हैं, बिकॉज उसका कोई मतलब नहीं है। अगर आपने जीएस में 150 स्कोर किया है और आपके सीसेट में सिर्फ 66 मार्क्स भी हैं तो वो कोई मतलब नहीं है उसका। सॉरी, हाँ, डोंट फॉल इनटू द रिसोर्स गैदरिंग ट्रैप। मतलब देयर इज अ कॉमन सेइंग इन द यूपीएससी मार्केट, लाइक we are here for being collector or IFS or IPS, whatever your choice is, not for the resource collector. We are here for being district collector or whatever your choices is. So focus upon that rather than just collecting or the PDFs, the resources. Focus on your consolidation, because at the end of the day, consolidation helps in you writing the answer, in recalling the prelims, and also in answering the interview also. Uh, Second, do not overcomplicate the current affairs. Do not run behind the current affairs like you are covering, as I mentioned earlier, 3, 4 coaching institutes magazine. That is not worth the effort. At max, covered one or two, if you are just too much into the current affairs, cover the two current affairs of two institutes quite holistically and revise it more so that much of the information can be retained in your mind. That should be the strategy according to me. And third, do not neglect your health. I think this might be quite offbeat, but I would like to talk upon this subject also, because what happens is कि हम यूपीएससी में थोड़ा सीएससी थोड़ी डिमांडिंग जर्नी है, थोड़ा हमसे एफर्ट्स मांगती है और हम उसके चक्कर में हमारी हेल्थ को थोड़ा कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ कर लेते हैं। ऑल्दो आई वाज लिविंग एट माई होम, बट कुछ लोग जैसे ओआरएन में प्रिपेयर कर रहे हैं, बाहर से प्रिपेयर कर रहे हैं, दे विल बी ईटिंग पीजी फूड्स, दे विल बी नॉट एक्सरसाइजिंग, बिकॉज हाँ, मैं टाइम कंस्ट्रेंट समझ सकता हूँ कि थोड़ा कंस्ट्रेंट रहता है टाइम का, तो थोड़ा हमारी हेल्थ को भी हमें फोकस करना चाहिए। बिकॉज कितना ही मतलब कंस्ट्रेंट हो टाइम का, हम वॉक कर सकते हैं, हम बेसिक एक्सरसाइज कर सकते हैं बेस्ड अपॉन योर बॉडी वेट इटसेल्फ। तो 10-15 मिनट्स अगर हम हमारी बॉडी के लिए निकाल दें तो दैट विल बी वर्थ द वर्थ द एफर्ट, बिकॉज व्हाट हैपेंस इज कि हमारी जो बॉडी है दैट विल बी मोर प्रोडक्टिव इफ वी आर डूइंग एक्सरसाइज, इफ वी आर बिकमिंग लाइक क्वाइट एक्टिव। ये कहीं ना कहीं हमारी मेमोरी को भी इंप्रूव करता है। इफ यू स्टडी द न्यूरो साइंस, देन हमारी मेमोरी भी डिपेंडेंट होती है हमारी बॉडी एक्टिविटी से। सो यू शुड फोकस अपॉन दैट ऑल्सो, डू नॉट नेग्लेक्ट योर हेल्थ। And fourth, for the answer writing part, I would like to mention that do not wait for the perfect answers. As Akshat Din sir has rightly mentioned that first 100 आंसर्स हमारे ट्रैश होंगे, रबिश होंगे बिल्कुल, बट हमें एक वो बेंचमार्क और एक जो मार्क है उसको क्रॉस करना है। फर्स्ट हमें 100 आंसर्स लिखने हैं, जैसे भी लिखने हैं, तो जिससे कि हमारा फियर है ऑफ आंसर राइटिंग वो थोड़ा सा दूर हो जाए और हमारे कंटेंट भी हमारा धीरे धीरे कंसोलिडेट होता रहेगा अगर हम रेगुलर आंसर राइटिंग लिखेंगे। तो दैट शुड बी आवर like motto. We should not compromise our answer writing based upon the instinct that we'll write on the day that we'll be writing the perfect answer itself and we'll not write the suboptimal answers. So that should not be the strategy, because to every perfect journey there is a suboptimal path also. So we try to follow that, like writing trash answers but write consistently, so that after getting evaluation you'll feel ki there is a scope for improvement, कहाँ पे मैं गलती कर रहा हूँ, कहाँ पे मैं गलती कर रही हूँ। So based upon that try to improve your answers, and at the end of the day अगर आप ऐसे consistently करते रहेंगे तो कहीं ना कहीं वो आपको कंपाउंड होकर आपको रिजल्ट देगा। दैट इज फॉर द शॉर्ट, मतलब कंसिस्टेंटली अगर आप अपने इवेल्युएशन और आपके फीडबैक पे काम कर रहे हैं तो वो कहीं ना कहीं आपको हेल्प करेगा। या so also I'd like to focus upon the mindset part, like I haven't mentioned that discipline and consistency, these are the two things that I don't know if many toppers talks about or not. Discipline और consistency अगर आपके अंदर है तो you will be on a much, I would say, greater advantage than your competitor who is not disciplined, who is not consistent. Because what happens is एक दो दिन सब कर लेते हैं, but वही काम repeatedly रोज करना दैट इज अ टास्क। एंड अगर आप वो रोज कर रहे हैं तो कहीं ना कहीं जो एल्बर्ट आइंस्टाइन थे उन्होंने बोला था कि कंपाउंडिंग इफेक्ट इज द एट्थ वंडर। तो वो एट्थ वंडर आपके कहीं ना कहीं काम आएगा। आप अगर रोज प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं, रोज मॉक टेस्ट लगा रहे हैं, रोज पढ़ रहे हैं और सफिशिएंट अमाउंट नंबर ऑफ आवर्स, तो आपको कहीं ना कहीं आपके अंदर इंप्रूवमेंट दिखने लगेगा। बट एट दी ओवर दी मंथ्स, नॉट जस्ट ऑन द डेज बट ओवर दी मंथ्स आपको इंप्रूवमेंट देखने को मिलेगा। सो प्लीज ट्राई टू बी कंसिस्टेंट, प्लीज ट्राई टू बी डिसिप्लिन। बिकॉज ये एग्जाम सिर्फ ना नॉलेज का नहीं है, ये मेंटल एंड्योरेंस भी आपका चेक करता है। बिकॉज राइटिंग बैक टू बैक आई से 5 पेपर्स ऑफ ऐसे, देन GS1, GS2, GS3, GS4 इन 3 days, मतलब उसके लिए सही में एंड्योरेंस चाहिए होता है। GS4 के टाइम पे तो आपको ऐसा लगेगा कि व्हाट द हेल, मतलब मैं क्या लिख रहा हूँ, कौन लिख रहा है, मतलब आपकी एक तरीके से पर्सनली मैं बताता हूँ कि ऐसा लगता है कि बस मेरा फर्स्ट मीन्स था तो आई वाज लाइक बस पेन चल रहा है, बस जो कहीं ना कहीं से चल रहा है, बस एंड्योरेंस की वजह से पेन चल रहा है। और हाँ, सेल्फ एनालिसिस इन दिस जर्नी इज क्वाइट इंपॉर्टेंट। बिकॉज व्हाट हैपेंस इज कि हम थोड़े से अटेम्प्ट दे लेते हैं तो हम थोड़ा गॉड कॉम्प्लेक्स टाइप ऑफ थिंग हो जाती है हमें कि मुझे तो सब आता है, और अगर नहीं भी आता है तो मतलब हमें वी शुड बी रिसेप्टिव टू द फीडबैक कि कहाँ हम गलती कर रहे हैं, जिससे कि हम थोड़ा इंप्रूव कर पाए। बिकॉज आफ्टर प्रीलिम्स ऑफ 24 मैं भी सोच रहा था कि मतलब मैंने स्टार्टिंग तो करा है, बट मैंने फिर थोड़ा अच्छे से एनालाइज किया तो मुझे लगा कि हाँ कहीं ना कहीं मेरे स्टार्टिंग में ही दिक्कत थी। बिकॉज 2024 का पेपर वॉज क्वाइट ऑन अ स्टैटिक साइड, इफ वी कंपेयर ऑन दी बेस्ड अपॉन 23 और 25, वो थोड़ा स्टैटिक की तरफ था और थोड़ा फैक्चुअल था। तो मैं कहीं ना कहीं उसमें लैक कर रहा था, तो वो मुझे सेल्फ एनालिसिस से पता चला। ऐसे ही आपको प्रीलिम्स और मेंस के कहीं ना कहीं पता चलेगा। For the interview, I would like to briefly talk about, because I have not scored much greater amount of marks. Like I have scored 168, and based upon this year's average, it is not just above the average itself. Like I think the average is somewhere around 180s. So basic में I can talk about कि we should prepare our DEF holistically, current affairs holistically, and uh, just the news that is being talked about the day before yesterday, that should be our prime focus upon. And if we have covered DEF, current affairs, and the most important news, then most of the thing is sorted, and here and there कुछ ना कुछ बाउंसर आएंगे, उसके लिए आप प्रिपेयर हो जाएंगे अगर आपने बेसिकली ये चीज़ें कर ली हैं। तो मैं ज़्यादा इंटरव्यू के बारे में बात नहीं करते हैं, मतलब ये मेरी बेसिक स्ट्रैटेजी थी, और यही मोस्टली तो मैंने लोगों से यही सुना था कि डैफ का एक एक वर्ड हमें हॉलिस्टिकली प्रिपेयर करना है, और करंट अफेयर्स को भी हमें अच्छे से कवर करना है। एंड जो लास्ट वीक की करंट अफेयर्स है स्पेशली उसको तो बहुत अच्छे से प्रिपेयर करना है, बिकॉज वो थोड़ी फ्रेश रहती है इंटरव्यूअर और जो भी पैनलिस्ट हैं उनके माइंड में, तो ज़्यादा क्वेश्चंस आने के चांसेस रहते हैं। So yeah, this was my strategy. Let's just read some of the live questions. Sir, how many subjects did you read? Did you read in the day? What I used to do was कि मैं आधा दिन ऑप्शनल को देता था. I was preparing full time, and आधा दिन I used to give for the GS part. Any subject like be it polity, be it economy, be it social justice, मैं एक आधा उसको देता था, आधा उसको देता था. And between prelims and mains मैं थोड़ा question answer मतलब उसमें लिखने की कोशिश करता था. व्यूज ऑन प्लान बी एक्चुअली डिफर्स फॉर यू, मतलब प्लान बी का थोड़ा सा ना, मतलब ये कंट्रोवर्शियल चीज़ इसलिए, कंट्रोवर्शियल आई डोंट से कंट्रोवर्शियल, बट थोड़ा डिफरिंग ओपिनियन इस पे इसलिए है क्योंकि सम पीपल थिंक कि अगर हमारे पास प्लान बी है दैन विल बी मोर रिलैक्स्ड, और हम थोड़ा अच्छे से कर पाएंगे, और हम थोड़ा स्ट्रेस फ्री होंगे तो हमारी प्रोडक्टिविटी ज़्यादा होगा, तो दैट इज़ ऑल्सो गुड। बट कुछ पीपल के लिए क्या हो जाता है कि प्लान बी की वजह से वो प्लान ए पे फोकस नहीं कर पाते हैं। तो मतलब आपको आपकी साइड देखनी है कि कहाँ पे आप लाइक करते हैं, कहाँ पे आपका कंफर्ट जोन है कि आप क्या प्लान बी को प्लान करके आपकी ज़्यादा एफिशिएंसी आ रही है, या फिर सिर्फ प्लान ए को। बिकॉज देयर इज़ अ थिंग कि अगर हम हमारी सारी बोर्ड्स को चला दें और देयर इज़ नो गोइंग बैक, तो हम कहीं ना कहीं पे सर्वाइवल करने का हम ढूंढते हैं। तो वो भी एक ओपिनियन है फॉर द प्लान बी। सो देयर इज मिक्स ओपिनियन अपॉन प्लान बी। What was your economy source? Actually, I have done the foundation from the Vision IAS. So most of my economy source was the Vision IAS foundation notes by Aditya Kalia sir. So that was my foundation notes. That was my economy source. So did you study classrooms only or books also? As I mentioned, मैंने विजन ऐसे फाउंडेशन किया था, तो मैंने मोस्टली तो स्टार्टिंग में क्लास नोट्स पे रिलाई किया, देन एडिंग अपॉन दी बेसिक रिसोर्सेज जो मार्केट में है, क्योंकि देर इज अ लिमिटेशन, बिकॉज द एग्जामिनर द टीचर्स कैन नॉट डिक्टेट ईच एंड एवरी वर्ड इन द क्लास इटसेल्फ। सो हमें कहीं ना कहीं थोड़ा हमें मतलब बुक्स की तरफ रिलाई करना पड़ता है। चलिए, दैट्स ऑल। सो थैंक यू एवरीवन फॉर लिसनिंग, एंड प्लीज़ ट्राई टू यूज़ योर ओन विजडम, बिकॉज जो भी मैंने सारी चीज़ बोली हैं प्लीज़ टेक इट विद पिंच ऑफ सॉल्ट। जो आपके लिए वर्क करती हैं उनको करिए, और जो नहीं वर्क करती हैं उनको यू कैन लीव इट, देयर इज नो हार्म। मतलब आपको अपनी पर्सनल स्ट्रेटेजी होनी चाहिए, बिकॉज आई थिंक दिस ईयर 950 प्लस पीपल हैव क्लियर दिस सीएससी एग्जाम, एंड 950 प्लस पीपल विल बी हैविंग देयर ओन स्ट्रेटेजी। बट आपको उनमें से जो भी मेजर रिपीटेटिवली थीम है, लाइक पीवाईक्यू एनालिसिस, हियर एंड देयर स्टैटिक को अच्छे से कवर करना, इनको थोड़ा सा फोकस करिए, बाकी आप अपना इंडिविजुअलाइजेशन कर दीजिए। थैंक यू।